Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Project Elected podcast. I'm your host, Audrey Perry Martin. I am so excited about today's podcast because I get to interview the mayor of North Logan, Lyndsay Peterson. And I just met Lyndsay today, and she is fantastic. We've been chatting a little bit, and she has some great stories to tell and a great experience running for mayor in North Logan. I will let her introduce herself more and because we definitely want to hear from her as much as possible. So, Lyndsay, thank you so much for coming today and being on our podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. Really, I was introduced to Project Elect right as I was considering whether to run, and so this is such an honor.
Well, we appreciate that. We love having somebody who's, actually engaged in our cause and in our organization, and it's so fun to meet you. So, would you just introduce yourself a little bit to start out with? Tell us a little bit about you and your current position and background.
Sure, yeah. So I am the mayor of North Logan, as you said. I've been in office for just over 2 months now, and it has been a whirlwind. I originally am from Central Utah, a town called Castledale, and I went to BYU for undergrad and then BYU Law School, and then I met my now husband, and he 6 months after we got married moved us to Ohio for medical school, and we were there for 9 years. And during that time, I kind of put him through medical school, through working as an associate attorney in a big firm practicing environmental law. And then we moved for a year for his fellowship to Albuquerque, and then ultimately ended up here for a position that he took in Logan. And so we've lived in Logan for 6 years now, and we have 3 kids. And yeah, it has been such a whirlwind, even just since moving to North Logan.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love your background. I've got 3 kids too. How old are your kids?
They are 12, 10, and 7.
Okay, that's exactly the same age as mine. So that's
Oh, really?
yeah, that's young kids. That's really young kids, but such a fun age.
It's a good sweet spot. I've said that. In fact, it's funny. I had another candidate for mayor come to me and try and convince me out to run, and he said, "You can run in 4 more years." And I said, "You know what? Right now, my kids are in such a sweet spot where they can take care of themselves, and I don't know where I'll be in 4 years. I don't know whether they'll be teens with a lot more needs. So I really have tried to capitalize on this time where my kids are great ages for serving in public office."
That's fantastic that you're thinking about it like that because a lot of times people are like, oh, I have my kids are too young. I can't do it till they're all out of the house. But you're proving that's totally wrong. So you're being an awesome
Well,
mayor.
I'm trying to prove that.
No, you totally are. Um, so for listeners who aren't in Utah, can you tell us a little bit about North Logan, your city?
Sure. Yeah, it's a city of 12,000 people. It's just north of Utah State University. So we have a lot of college professors that live in our area. We have a lot of really educated people who live in our city, a lot of doctors, a lot of business owners, and then professors. Really, in my neighborhood alone, we have about 10 business professors. So it's a really great community. We have more parkland per capita than anywhere in Utah. So we have a lot of land. It's still pretty rural in some ways. We have a lot of farms around us, but we also have a lot of the big city amenities because we're close to Logan City, and we have all of Cache Valley that surrounds us. So that's about, I think it's 130,000 people in Cache Valley as a whole, and then 12,000 in our city.
Yeah.
And we've experienced a ton of growth in the last 5 years. I think we've close to 40 something percent
Wow.
growth in the last 5 years. So that's been a big issue that comes up in a lot of ways in city government.
Yeah, I'm sure, especially in a town of that many people, to have 40% growth, that would be a big difference.
Yeah, I think we've
Mhm.
about doubled in the
Okay.
last 10 years.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I know all of Utah's growing like crazy, but that's a lot of growth and probably
It
a lot of things to
is.
do as a mayor and city council to get done.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you were on the planning commission before this, right? So you've been involved in the growth and planning and everything like that for a while.
Yeah, it kind of has snowballed. I agreed to serve on the planning commission, and within a year and a half, I was planning commission chair. And that's really, it's kind of a sleeper group where you see all of the early issues as they arise. So we were dealing with some ordinances that needed to be updated. We ultimately have the first look at determining what developments happen in our town and how they happen. And so that's given me a really good perspective as mayor, because we see some of those same issues that keep coming up. And then having a legal background in that has also been invaluable, because when we have attorneys come into city council, just talking to them from a perspective of a lawyer, where I understand, that there's some terms of art that maybe lay people don't necessarily understand the importance of. That's been really, really helpful. And I think it also, the planning commission step, I think, was crucial in really understanding some of the issues that I would later face as mayor.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, that's fantastic that you were able to, do that service on the planning commission and then learn so much about the city after just being there for a short time and run for mayor. And it sounds like you had a ton of support when you ran for mayor. Um,
I did. Yeah, I don't think I would have even considered running, on my own, but I was approached early on, when the previous mayor decided that he wasn't going to run again. I was approached by some former mayors who said, "Would you consider this?" And I love that about North Logan. They're kind of between a big city and a small town still. They're trying to figure out where we are all trying to figure out which one we are. But I love that we're small enough to have this group of people who really just care about the leadership of the city and who back candidates that they think would do a good job. That really changed the course of my decision making.
mhm. Well, I was reading about you before this podcast, and I found a letter from three of the former mayors of North Logan supporting you, and they go through all your amazing qualifications. And then I love this last paragraph. I'm just going to read it. It says, "Finally, and perhaps most importantly, Lindsay's motivation for running is solely based on a love of our community and our people. She has no axe to grind or personal agenda to push. Rather, she is committed to building on the great foundation we have in North Logan City and keeping our community a great place for families and individuals to live, work, and play." And I just thought that was the best paragraph ever from these former mayors who were supporting you and saying this is who we want because she is, cares about public service and she's doing it to help the community and for the right reasons. And not only is she qualified, but she's doing it for a good reason.
Yeah, those kinds of things. I really at this point feel so undeserving of all of the generosity that I received during my campaign and even now, because I can't tell you how much of a boost that is, because when you're running for office or even when you're serving in office, it can feel kind of like you're operating in a vacuum. But to have the support from good people and to say, "Hey, you can do this," is so invaluable. I can't even express how much I've appreciated that. But I think that that's reflective of the fact that I am a newcomer to our city, and that was unusual. The mayor before me, he had also moved in, but he'd lived here for quite a while before running for mayor. And but to have an import come in and run for mayor was a pretty big deal. But I think it ultimately was an asset, because I don't have I can be really objective when I'm making decisions, because I don't have a long history. But also I appreciate those relationships, because I came from a small town where my both sets of ancestors founded our community in Emory County. And so I understand the importance of being true to those values that founded a city. But I also really try to make it a very transparent, objective, law-based city government. And I think people did respond to that, because I think they knew that they wouldn't get two people. Whether if you have a personal relationship, you're going to get the same answer as if you're someone that I've never met before.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. And what you want in an elected official, right? You want everyone to be treated equally and know they have the same shot, and it be very law based. And I'm a attorney too, so I definitely appreciate
Right.
that. Yeah, yeah. So what are some things that you've been able to accomplish as an elected official that you're proud of?
Well, it has been a very whirlwind first 2 months, and we've done a ton. We petitioned the state legislature for some funding for some water infrastructure that we need so badly, and we were one of 10 projects that were approved among 180 applications for funding. And so we haven't heard exactly how much funding we got for that, but that's something that our community is in dire need of. But probably one of the most fun and the busiest thing about my administration so far has been the construction of new city offices. Currently, our city offices are this tiny, tiny building. I don't even actually have a legitimate office,
What?
and we have one conference room. Anyway, it's in this building that I think has existed for a long time, and it's been a doctor's office, a library, a grocery store. Anyway, so we are building 14,000 square foot new office space for the city offices, and then in conjunction with that, a new community center that will be kind of an event center for people that they can use to rent out for different events and then to have meetings there. And then we're expanding our city library. But that has meant a couple meetings a week and making decisions on things that I have zero background in before I started, because, as mayor, deciding construction methods that would be best to build these buildings. But it's been a ton of fun too. And, meeting with interior designers to decide, what this building's going to look like. So that's taken up a lot of time, but it's been a lot of fun too. And then I think finally it's improving the communication that we have with our citizens. We've just really amped up through some interns that we have in our office. We've amped up how much we communicate with our citizens. We've started to use Facebook and Instagram more. And I think that's just because I'm comfortable with that world. It's a really easy way to be transparent, to say, hey, we're meeting, here's what we're talking about. I don't want people ever to say they met behind closed doors, we had no idea what they were doing. I want to err on the side of, hey, come give us all your comments. We want the input before we make those decisions. We don't want frustrated citizens to come in after we make a decision and without their input.
Mhm.
So I think those three things have been really what I've been focused on.
Yeah, that's a lot for 2 months. So those are some big projects. That's fantastic. What drove you to get involved in politics in the first place? And can you kind of walk us through how that happened?
Sure. Yeah. I went to a Friends of the Library book sale when I first moved here, and they said, do you want to become a friend of the library? And I said, why not? Of course I do. It was $10. And within the week, and I still actually don't know how this happened, but within the week, the president of the Friends called and said, hey, would you mind serving as the president elect of the Friends of the Library? It's like, you don't know me, but sure, I guess you'll see if I'm qualified after the fact. So I got involved with the Friends, and our Friends group is kind of interesting in that they have a large endowment that was set up by Deloy Hansen, who's from here. And so they manage this $4 million endowment, which produces $200,000 a year in income. And so the Friends and ultimately have kind of an inordinate amount of power that than they would have in a different situation. And so I was working a lot with the mayor and with the library, and just really developed a passion for our city library. And the other thing about it is that at the time, the Friends and the library itself and the library board, ironically, were in just gridlock with fighting fighting amongst those groups. And so I came in kind of with no baggage, and I think that was really helpful in just saying, let's clean this up, let's be friends, let's do whatever it is that's best for our library. And I think that, I worked with several mayors in that process, and And then ultimately, um, really my running for mayor stemmed from a failure, which was I applied to be a municipal court judge and made it to the final two candidates and ultimately wasn't chosen for that. And that was really frustrating at the time. And the then mayor said, but you could serve on the planning commission. And I said, those aren't equivalent positions. But I kind of got over myself and served on the planning commission and really just kind of got more and more steeped in city government and in a great way where I started to, the more you understand, the more you're involved and the more you feel like you do have a voice in that. And so I think when it came time to choose whether or not to run, I was someone that former mayors had worked with, and so then they encouraged me to run. But as far as politics go, getting into politics, it's something that I always said, much like going to law school, that I would never do because I was a little bit too close to it with my dad. He's a lawyer and he would run for county attorney every 4 years, I think. And I think he only was opposed one time, but he got an ulcer, I think, every time. So I watched him. My mom was school board president for 22 years. Um, my grandpa was mayor. I just had a really good foundation of just you pitch in your community, you lend your talents as minimal as they may be to making your community better, and you just invest. And I think I had a real hunger for that after living in different cities for my husband's training. um, it just felt like, oh, we just need to put down roots and really invest in our community.
Yeah. I love that, and I love how you kind of explained how being an outsider actually helped you in the beginning because you didn't have any baggage, and I think people sometimes think, "Oh, I have to live in a place for decades before I can run for office or get involved in my community or, sit on these boards or planning commissions." And I mean, that's not true, and you've shown that there's actually an advantage to not having all that and coming in as an outsider with a fresh perspective, and I like that a lot. And
I think so.
um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think one big thing is just I will admit early on in any meeting that I'm learning. And I think that's an asset, actually. I was in a meeting, we were talking about, it was a transportation meeting, and we were supposed to be approving this job application or a job description. And, and, they said, it was our first meeting that a lot of the mayors had participated in on this board. And they said, you can wait a month, we can do this at the next meeting if you don't feel like you know enough. And I said, I'm just going to level with all of you. I don't know, I will not know in 30 days enough or more about what it takes to be this job description. So I'm going to defer to you today because I know what I don't know.
Uh-huh.
And I felt like a collective breath of from some of the other mayors who, you're sitting in this meeting and you're making decisions and you don't have all the information. And I think just acknowledging that we're going to need to rely on people who are experts in this specific area
Mhm.
to help us make good decisions. And so I think being kind of a newbie is actually an asset in that way, as long as you acknowledge that you just don't know everything.
Yeah. Yeah, to be a leader, you don't have to be an expert on everything, and you shouldn't be, and that's great. You figured that out and kind of use that as an asset to defer to others who do know, who are the experts in the subject matter. That's great.
Yeah.
Um, what you kind of talked about how your family was really involved in politics in their community. Anything else that prepared you for this role, you feel?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think one big thing that I would have never assumed would be an asset was that I worked for that firm that I told you about, and the environmental department in our firm was just notorious for being loud and adversarial. And people in the neighboring departments could hear attorneys interacting back and forth, yelling at each other. And so there was a period of time where we were working on a really intense case. I was pregnant with my first baby, and I think I spoke with one partner who was in a different office every day, and I think one or both of us hung up on each other in every single phone conversation that we had. And I say this smiling, but only with some time since that happened. But it was very adversarial. There were adult tantrums that happened on the regular. We anyway, and I think that has been so valuable because now I'm unflappable. When I there's a intense meeting, and we've had quite a few in city council or in planning commission, I I really don't I guess I don't take it personally when people feel really passionately about something, or if they're perhaps even saying some things that aren't 100% kind. I usually can see that kind of for what it is. I think being a mother helps in that way too, where you see tantrums from your kids and you say, this isn't really about the green shirt that you wanted to wear today. It's probably you're a little overstimulated after today, or whatever it is. And I think both those perspectives, working with some really adversarial tough people, and then also with children who are irrational, I think both those things have been really preparatory for serving in leadership positions. And I know that even in the short time that I've been mayor, that's caught some people off guard. I think that they expect one thing, especially from a female mayor, and they get me. And I'm sure you can relate to this as an attorney, but really it just kind of comes down to the facts, and then the law or the ordinance or whatever it is that you apply to those facts. And it can sound a little bit robotic, but I think taking the emotion out of it has been something that I've just learned over time, that if someone's angry or mean, that a lot of times that's an emotion that comes out of fear or insecurity, or so let's address the core issue and not lean into some of those unproductive emotions.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I like that a lot, especially your example about the kids and dealing with the irrational emotional children. And it's not really about what they say it's about. And as a mother, learning to identify that and using that skill, as mayor, that's fantastic. That's great that you were able to kind of transition that skill that all mothers
Don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone that I when they're yelling, I just see my
have.
toddlers yelling at me.
Like, yep, yep. That's awesome. You might need a nap. Um,
Yep.
yep. So tell me what you think makes a good public servant.
Well, I think that that mayor's letter kind of touched on it. That what as mayor of a smaller town, I think it's easy to be in it for the right reasons. I don't get paid very much. The power is not very great. And so it's easy to do it for the right reasons. But I think that really is how you hit that sweet spot of
Mhm,
making decisions that are just best for whomever you represent.
mhm.
And so I think that's a lot of it. And then having the humility to know that you don't know everything, and being able to seek people to advise you that can get you up to speed on what you need to know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And I love that it's so obvious that you're doing it for the right reasons. So that's fantastic. And we need more people like you to run for office. Um, and
Oh, thank you.
and speaking of that, I want to talk a little bit about women running for office and why that's important. And if you maybe found any impediments to running for office as a woman, or maybe it helped you, and how that kind of played out.
I think that it ultimately did help me. I definitely got some comments, like people who said the last thing we need is a woman running this city.
Oh no.
But I really do think that that view is pretty
Mhm.
radical at this point. That that's not how most people feel. And I think people were really ready to have a female mayor. We've never had before me, I and we've had some really great women run. And so I think ultimately it helped me. What I think was a huge asset for me is that I had the best group of friends that supported me. And that was anything from walking in a parade with me and just feeling that literal feeling of being surrounded by people who support me. But also, I had one friend who years ago said, listen, if you ever decide to run for office, I will do anything you need me to do in terms of picking up the slack for you as a mom. So if your kids need to be run somewhere, and it was just carte blanche, whatever you need. I can't tell you how big of a deal that is. Or just having people who send me texts or write me notes that say, "Hey, I just think you're really great at this, and I think you'd be really good at this." That's life changing, honestly. Even now, I rely on those kinds of comments to say, "I can do this. I'm qualified to do this." This is something that I should be doing. So I think that was a really big deal for me, is just having the support of friends and family and saying, "You can do this. Why wouldn't you do this?"
Yeah, I love that, in the kind of sense of community and friendship that you felt while you were running for office. I think a lot of women have those networks and those great friend groups that will support them. And even if maybe some of us don't want to run for office, we can still help and support other people running for office. And I think that's an important thing to remember, when a woman's running, or your friend or encouraging somebody to run. How do you think we can encourage more women to run for office?
Well, I think that really that it kind of should happen how it did with me, or at least that's what I know. But I think it really just kind of looks like finding something that you feel passionately about and being involved in that. And then it can snowball from there. And that's a warning from me that it probably will snowball from there. But I have a friend who, Kristen, and she's noticed that she moved into our community and noticed that our elementary school just had really poor security. And so what she did is she approached the school and she said, "What can I do to help? What can we do to change this situation? How can we improve it?" And I love that. I think that that is so valuable in a community, to say, to have someone who identifies a need but then also offers their support to those who are in the situation, to say, "I can do this for you," or "I can rally other parents behind this cause," or "I can fundraise." And I think there are a lot of ways to be involved that don't involve running for office. And I think that it's a good place to start. And we really, as a city, and I think every level of government, relies on people getting involved, even just serving on a committee. We rely on good citizens being reasonable in those committees, because city council and mayor can't do it all.
Mhm. Mhm. That's great. What about your family? Did they give you support while you were running? Did they help you out?
Yes. So my husband, I didn't know what to expect from him, because he does not relate to this at all. You could not pay him to run for office. And I'm the opposite. Every committee that I'm on, I end up chairing, for better or for worse. And so I really didn't know what to expect from him when I broached this potential running for office. But it has been such an opportunity to grow closer as a couple. I just can't even express to you how supportive he's been. And it's been in ways um, that I didn't necessarily expect. In fact, even just he showed up to a meet the candidate night, and I think he was more nervous than I was in that meeting. I think just to watch me up there and kind of being under fire a little bit. But he's been so great, and has adjusted his busy schedule to make up the difference, when kids need to be somewhere, and even just to help me take a step back from some things. My mom was wonderful and has been unwaveringly supportive in every single step of this, where if I've ever, I don't know if I should do this, I don't even know if I want to do this. And she's the one who was saying, "You can do this." One thing that's I love from her is that she always says, "Dumber people than you have done this." And that has applied throughout my life. You're not the dumbest person to ever attempt being mayor. And whether I'm at the bottom of that pile, that ranking, or not, it's comforting to know that other people have done this with less qualifications than I. So she was really great, and really, I just poached all the best characteristics of every member of my family, and friends. But my sister, she's long ghost written some difficult texts or emails that I've ever written. She's a brilliant writer. My other sister is a genius at marketing. And then my kids have been amazing too. I didn't know what to expect from them, but they've really leaned into it, and they've been so invested. And I think that I get a lot of validation from knowing that I'm showing them that this is how moms are.
Mhm.
This is normal to them. For moms to be chairing a meeting, or to be the mayor, or to honestly, or just being in their schools helping out with things. I think I'm kind of creating a framework for them that this is what a mom is.
Mhm.
And I think we all get to choose what our kids see as what a mom does. And I love that mine will have a pretty expansive view of what motherhood encompasses.
That's amazing. I love that, and I love that your kids are learning from your example and watching all these great things you're doing, and that's amazing. And it's really fun to see your kids support you and be excited for things that you're doing, and think that this is normal. This is what a mom can do. I love how you phrase that. So I wanted to ask, we're almost out of time, but what is some helpful advice that you received as you began, and do you have any advice for political newbies if they're just starting out thinking about getting involved?
I think my advice is just to, I guess I can just tell you what I did, which is to really utilize the people around you. And that is absolutely what I did. There are some things that I'm not great at, but I asked my friend to do my graphic design. I asked my other friend to kind of be my party planner and just type person. But I think just utilize the resources around you, and also get advice from people who've been there. I had a lot of conversations with former mayors and former city councilmen, and just a lot of people to say, what kind of things will I be facing, and what does this job look like? And I think really ultimately it came down to, I felt prompted to do this, and that that is something that I just kind of relied on even when things were hard, because I'm really uncomfortable running for office at any level. I don't. It feels kind of like a referendum on my character as a person, even though it's not personal. So I would just say, just go for it. Just go for it, and get the support of people in your community that you respect, and get their perspective as well.
Hmm. That's that's beautiful that you felt prompted to do it, and you had kind of the faith to carry through with it, even though it wasn't necessarily something you were comfortable with, and that's impressive. Well, what we wanted to end with today is, every podcast episode we ask our guest for an invitation to our listeners for something they can do to get more involved. Do you have an invitation that you'd like to
I do. I've tipped my hand a little bit
share?
because I'm saying the same things over and over. But I think two things. One, lift where you stand. So find a need in your community, and or in your home, or whatever that is. Find it, and figure out a way that you can make the world better, even just in that small way. And then partner with people who are already in the work, or gather people to help you with that work. That's my first challenge. And then second, I think, is look around you and see who you can encourage. See who you can be generous with your comments to. I That was life changing for me, but and I think a lot of times we think those thoughts, but voice them. Send that text that says, "Hey, I really love how you made this comment that I heard. I think that's so articulate, and I think you're a really impressive person." That can change the tide for someone else. So I think lift where you stand, and then encourage other
Mhm.
people.
I love that phrase, "lift where you stand." That's such a good visualization of what we can do and how we can help in our communities by just being where we are and finding ways to lift and help and figure out what we can do and gather those around us to do that. And that's that's fantastic. I love it. Um, Lyndsay, thank you so much. Mayor Peterson, sorry. Thank you so much for being here. I I I think you're amazing. I think you're fantastic, the first woman mayor of North Logan, and you clearly were just so qualified that you just kept getting more and more responsibility, and that's a great person to be. So I really appreciate you joining us, and it's been such a pleasure to talk to you today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And this is the end of our podcast. And I just want to remind everyone to like us on Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. Would really appreciate that. And tune in next time. Thank you.